Hi guys, how you all doing? So we've heard a lot in the news by the protesters, a lot everywhere these days about defunding school police. And I'm not gonna lie, when I first heard about it, I was just like, defund school police? Don't we need them? Who's gonna stop the mass shooter? Who's gonna stop us from killing each other in the hallways? I really was thinking that, and that's what we're gonna talk about today. Hi, I'm Dr.D-Nice, serving you pop culture seasoned with wellness and wisdom. So, if you're not from America, I don't know how it is in many schools across the world, but here in America, most schools have a police officer in them. In some states, like here in North Carolina, they're referred to as SROs, student resource officers. And the issue is that sometimes these officers, they kind of treat the kids in school kind of like the police officers on the street treat the kids. There's profiling, there is abuse. The kids are unable to be kids. They feel threatened entering the building because these police officers are there. I mean, of course, sometimes the officers are quite nice, but I won't say overwhelming. What is being passed on is that fine for all the good that may happen, there's a whole lot of bad that is happening. A lot of kids in school, young, growing, developing, at a area where they're there to learn and hang out with their friends, they're feeling threatened and abused by these officers that are there to protect them in the school situation. And look, kids are going to be kids. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to have disagreements. They're going to question authority. That is just part of growing up. And unfortunately, what especially black kids are experiencing with a lot of these police officers in the school is that some of those same issues of just growing up, just coming into your own, are being penalized to the point that you're leaving school with a police record for some disagreement that you had and that you may not have handled even well. But let me stop for a second and I'll give you some examples. So I myself had the privilege of going to two separate high schools growing up, and they were absolutely two different cultures, and let me explain. So the first high school where I spent my freshman year in high school in Irvington, New Jersey. This was in the heart of the city. The school was a big brick building with, I think, like 3 or 4 floors. I can't remember. But there's a armed police officer on every single floor of the school. Then I moved to South Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, to finish off high school, my sophomore, junior, and senior year, and I went to Plantation High School. Yes, I said it, Plantation High School. I went to Plantation High School, which is like an open flow building with courtyards that was in like a suburban part of South Florida. So we're going to compare both schools here. In my high school, in Irvington High School, this is a high school filled with mostly Black and Puerto Rican children. There were some white kids, not that many. Most of us really walked to school. The school was right there in the area where we walked to school. Whoever may have, honestly, did anybody get driven to school? I don't think so. I'm trying to remember. Most people just, maybe if they were real late one day and their parents dropped them off. I don't even remember seeing that. But anyway, most people walked to school. And go over to Plantation High School, where I went, which is a predominantly white school. A lot of the kids had luxury automobiles. Like, who? I thought I'd entered a different world. I didn't know kids could drive BMWs. But anyway, that was what the school I went into. And most of the black kids in that school were bused in from another neighborhood, a black neighborhood called Parkway. There are a few of us there that actually lived in the area that school serviced. There's a few of us black kids that lived there, but the majority of the black kids were bused in. But like I said, it was a predominantly black school. I do not recall any security, any police officer on the campus. Look, if they were there, their presence was very subtle, as opposed to Irvington High, where they were clear, visible, brandishing their weapons. You knew that they were there, and you fell in line because of that. And so the differences in the school too is that Irvington High School was a very locked school. Once you got in that day, you did not ever go back outside again, period, until the end of the school day when you left. Plantation High School in South Florida, and it may be just because of South Florida, or maybe things have changed. It was a long time ago, 1984. I graduated class in 1988. Anyway, Plantation High School, we could leave the campus, we could walk across the street to get some food, we could leave and come back. It was just a different environment altogether. And I only mention that to say, because when I took a step back and looked at how security was handled at both schools, I made a conclusion. At Irvington High School, how the kids handled their issues with each other, they were very aggressive. If somebody had a problem with you, you knew it. They're going to be up in your face. There's going to be a fight after school. As a matter of fact, I gotta admit it, I used to, after school, my favorite activity was to follow the fight. My friends would be gone, walking home by themselves, but no, I wanted to follow the fight. We knew there was going to be a fight always after school, and I'd follow it, watching them beat up on each other, girls, boys, it didn't matter to me. I just thought it was sheer entertainment. Hey, it is what it is. But that's how people handled their disagreements. They were fighting it out, and they were going to be up in your face. You were going to know that they had an issue with you. Fast forward to Plantation High School, people had issues with each other, but instead of confronting it face on, they did these things called microaggressions or passive aggressions, where I'll give you an example. These girls, they were standing around the board where they had posted all the people that were going to be on the cheerleading squad. This other girl, let's call her Becky, and Becky made the cheerleading team. And all this time, I thought Becky was friends with Michelle and them, who were looking at the board. And then I heard Michelle and them like, I can't believe she made it. Why is she going to be on the... What? That's not the right accent. I can't believe she made it. I can't believe she's going to be on the cheerleading squad with us. And they were just cheering her down. And then I was confused. I was just like, hey guys, I thought Becky was y'all's friend. I mean, I literally said that because I was so confused, because I honestly was not accustomed to seeing people be so passive aggressive in how they handle each other. I mean, I'm Jamaican, first of all. You don't have to ever guess how we feel about nothing, good or bad. And then coming from a school before where, if people had a conflict, you knew it, y'all were going to fight it out, y'all were going to argue it out. That's just how it was done. So this passive aggressive way of handling differences, I was not as accustomed to. And that was my first encounter, because I remember it to this day, but I'm sure there were tons more. So the difference is, in this more urban setting, more predominantly black setting, the aggression, I feel the police officers being present in the building, having such a obvious presence, the aggression is easier to police, easier to label. Whereas on the other hand, microaggressions, passive aggressions, it's harder to label, it's harder to see, it's harder to pinpoint, because people can call it something else if you call it out. Honestly, both of them are bad. Both of them are bad. And they both need to be handled in the same way by school security, school policing. But what happens is they are not. Police are placed, or SROs are placed in schools, or are more aggressive, or more obvious in schools where the culture, the people tend to deal with their disagreements with each other in a more obvious way. They may be fighting, they may be arguing. You're gonna know. And then in schools where the kids tend to not deal with their conflicts that same way, they don't have this obvious presence of these police officers, and that's profiling. That's profiling right there. And so you end up with children, kids, because these still are kids. Your body may be fully formed like an adult, but your brain is not there yet. I said before, it's age 25 where your brain is fully developed. Before then, you don't fully appreciate or fully understand the consequences, actions versus consequences. And here you are at this age. I mean, we finished high school at 18. That's still another 7 years before you're a fully formed adult. And before that, you're 4 years in school. So you're like at 14 years old and you're being held to the standard as if you're a fully formed adult when you have these police officers in the school profiling children, harassing children, and making them feel like criminals when they are kind of going through some of the usual phases of children where they will question authority, where they won't necessarily get along. They're trying to flex their independence. And then when you add that to this kids in some of these schools that are more predominant, you have some of the trauma that some of these young people have to deal with from home, from culture, from all the other things that society has put on black kids that has traumatized them. Then you add an officer on there that is going to squash them because of some of these disadvantages and because they're young. That is not acceptable. Not acceptable at all. And I mean, it makes me a little teary to think about it, because it's just not fair. These are kids. These are kids that have gone through so much, and now anyway, what's the solution? What's the solution to that? So we hear the statement, defund the police. School police. Defund school police. Is that the solution? It could be. Well, the truth of the matter is, are the police officers the one in the school to really help with the aggression that kids will show towards each other? Will the police officers handle the microaggressions that occur? You know they won't. It's not as easy to connect the dot between somebody passively aggressively handling their friend. Like, you see all the school shooters, you hear about them coming in and shooting up the place because they were teased, they were bullies, but you can't track it back to a particular person. But on the side of the kids that tend to handle things in a more aggressive manner, in a more confrontational manner, you can tell which kid punched you in the face because they were mad. But you can't track it back to which kid punched this guy in his psyche, in his brain, that caused him to want to come in and shoot up the place. It's harder to police that, and that's why they target schools and kids that tend to be black, then they tend to handle conflicts in a more they tend to handle conflict in a more forward way. Listen, let me go back. Defund the SROs, the student resource officers. After I watched the video of this little kid being hauled, 6-year-old kid being hauled out in a cop car in handcuffs and thrown in the back of a police officer, imagine the trauma. After I watched that, I'm just like, if they're not defunded, they need to be at least retrained. There needs to be a lot of funds putting in to training these officers to really help in these situations. At my son's middle school, the elementary school did not have an SRO, but at their middle school now they have one. I love the man. The first time I saw him, I was just like, hey, watch out for my kid for me. And my son is just like, he's a nice guy. He's just walking around the school and he seems quite friendly. He seems quite happy to be in there with the children. He seems like he understands his job is to support them, to encourage them, to kind of point them in direction when they make a wrong mistake. I don't see this officer being the one that's going to be like profiling and really doing some of the things that you hear the stories that you hear about kids getting police records and those things because of the student resource officers. I mean, he doesn't look like that. I don't know. But if they're going to be in the schools, they need to be properly trained on how to handle children and how to handle their developmental stages that they're in, how to handle some of the traumas that they've been that caused them to behave in such a manner. They need to be able to handle those in a proper manner. And not profiling children, not having them as criminals in their own school when they're trying to learn. The defunding of the police, could this fund the school police, defunding of school police, this fund could be switched over to having more counselors in the school, really teaching children how to handle conflict. Because the aggression and the microaggression and the passive aggression is not it'll be a whole new video. We won't really get into it, but how to handle conflict, that is not the way. And it would be perfect if a lot of resources were put into really teaching these children how to handle conflict, how to respect each other's boundaries, how to respect each other's differences. Getting licensed clinical social workers in the school. If we defunded the school police, we could bring some of those funds into there to get social workers in to really help children deal with some of this PTSD, anxiety, depression that is running rampant in our schools. And really helping them process some of the trauma that a lot of these children are going through, especially when they're not in the school building, when they're at home, and they actually bring it to the school environment. We can have more social workers really helping them to process some of these things. We could really spend time teaching children, build it into the curriculum, how to have coping mechanisms when people are in disagreement with you. I mean, so much can be done rather than to treat students like criminals, rather than to have students come into school seeing these armed guards that seem to be against them. Then so much more can be done with those resources that can really help and benefit and create great citizens, educated citizens for the world. Listen, I'm not going to say like there's any utopia out there. I'm not crazy. I understand kids are going to be kids. There's going to be disagreements. There's going to be stuff is going to go down where you really do need an officer in there. So I'm not even saying that officers need to leave the school altogether. There just needs to be some changes. There really does. And I don't know. Let me know what y'all think in the comment section below. We're not going to solve it here on this one video. This is just starting the conversation. What y'all think? Defund school police? Leave the school police alone? School police is not the problem? I don't know. I just wanted to talk about it because, it's a hot subject out there. And I had some experience in having gone through 2 high schools that were so totally different. Let me know in the comment section below. Let's talk. And don't forget, follow me on Instagram, where I do a lot of wellness information that is just for you. All right, remember, I got you. Peace and love. We can't forget love. Gotta love each other, guys.